Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Shane Needham. Let me do some introductions here where what we talk about is the never be outworked theme, and that can be on genres such as science, such as business, which we'll be talking a lot about today, kind of probably both of those, science, business, relationships, powerlifting, bodybuilding, so many different topics, coaching, so many different topics that I'm really passionate about, and we've been getting lots of good feedback from all of those topics and our theme. And so we actually have a platform where all these podcasts can be seen on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on YouTube, and also Spotify. So go see all the previous ones there, and they're constantly uploaded and routinely uploaded. And you can also see things on my website to learn more about me at drsneedham.com. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Facebook, and you can also follow me on Twitter. And you can also follow me on my latest platform, Parler, as well. So find me there, a quick search, and you'll see who I am, just of Shane Needham or Needham Shane, and you'll find me there. Thank you, all you listeners, all you viewers, for all your positive feedback on social media. We've been getting such great feedback, and a lot of the feedback is, Shane, you're so inspirational. Well, here's what I want to tell you. You inspire me probably more than I inspire you. So I love all of your stories, and that's what we'll be talking about today. We'll be giving Raman a voice, and a lot of people have said that. They're like, Shane, it's great. You are giving people a voice, just a voice to talk about what their story is. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. So Raman, today we're going to be talking about business, and probably business and science. And we're probably going to be talking about your new baby that's a couple of months old. We'll be talking about so many different things. And so, Raman, introduce yourself, and thank you very, very much for joining us. Raman is joining us from, are you in Boston?
In Boston, yeah.
Okay. So he's joining us all the way from Boston, Massachusetts. So it's morning for me, afternoon for him. And I just really appreciate it. I know you're really, really busy. So, Raman, describe yourself, tell your story, introduce yourself.
Well, hi Shane, it's a pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me on your show. For those who have no idea who I am, so I grew up in the northeast of England in a place called Newcastle. Educated in that part of the world, and was fortunate enough to get a degree in marketing. That led me down a path just by chance in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sector. I'm not a scientist by trade, despite my name, which Shane can talk about, I'm sure. And then ended up starting a marketing business that specializes in the drug development and life science space back in 2009. That business has grown over the last 12 years or so. It ultimately led to me moving to the US and relocating my family to Boston a couple of years ago. We now have about 45 people in the US and Europe, and we have one person in Asia now as well. So we are kind of slowly expanding and
expanding. That's great. That's great growth. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's been a fun journey, and I suppose what's accompanied my professional growth has been my personal growth as well in that journey. Starting your own business and growing your own business is not the smoothest of rides at times, which I'm sure, Shane, you could talk about as well.
Always.
So for me, I think aligning the pace of the business alongside the growth of myself has been a really important journey, and it's something that's overlooked by a lot of people, particularly when they get in their 20s and 30s, where they just seem to just maybe take their eye off professional development, especially when you're running your own business, because that's so consuming. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to ask deeper questions. So you're not going to get off the hook that easy. What a great story. And so first of all, tell me the most important thing. So Raman is a father of 3, and tell me, you just recently had a baby. I mean, obviously family is important to you. We've talked before. I was on your podcast. We've talked previously. I was on your podcast, Molecule to Market before, and I just really enjoyed that. And a lot of people have asked me about it. So thank you very much for that. And so tell me about your new baby. Tell me everything. When was he born? Talk about how that's going because of COVID and all those things. What are the challenges? And what are, of course, the rewards?
Yeah, so we welcomed our third boy, Ari, into the world in the middle of August. And it was an interesting time to obviously bring a child into the world with COVID. It's been very strange in some senses because what was 6 months, or not quite 6 months in, 5 months, and no one has held our baby bar us, which I've got obviously 2 older kids as well, and one of I would say the most special things about having children is watching the interplay with your parents or your brothers, and seeing your family fall in love with your child is one of the most beautiful things ever. So we haven't had that. And, added to that, we've not been able to go back home to the UK. So none of our family have met Ari, none of obviously via FaceTime and stuff like that. So in that sense, it's been quite difficult at times. We don't necessarily stop and think about it, but we've lost out, definitely. But on the flip side, Ari's been born into a family of love and laughter, and everyone's here, right? We had the boys off school when he was born because of COVID. We couldn't send the elder to school. So he's been surrounded by 4 of us, on a daily basis. And so his sensory overload must be just, crazy. So I suppose what we've lost out on, we've gained in other ways. And that's, I suppose, a positive way of thinking about it. But no, it's been nice. It's a handful, as you know, Shane, having children, especially when you've got a few of them and you're outnumbered. But no, we're enjoying it. We're enjoying it. You have to treasure and I suppose, enjoy these moments, because everyone tells you your kids grow up quickly, and you don't really believe it until it starts happening. You're like, damn, all those people were actually right.
Yeah, that's exactly true. So what a challenge. I didn't really even think about that because my kids are older, but yeah, one of the things that you love to watch is the grandparent hold your child. Your parents hold your own child, and that must be challenging. So man, I'm empathetic towards that. But it's good. It's good also, and you always have an optimistic mindset. So we can FaceTime and things like that. We couldn't do that 20 years ago. So
we're grateful for the technology, and he's just going to be used to having this screen in front of him and people shouting his name on a little iPhone in front of him, but it's fine. It is what it is.
It is what it is. I want to go back before maybe we should move on a little bit. Okay. Because I really liked and it's interesting, whenever I have somebody on the last couple of guests too, they start talking and then all of a sudden it's like, gosh, I feel like I'm in therapy, and I have these epiphanies. I want to go back to it, Raman, and I wrote a note here, but about how your personal growth matches your business growth, and I that is so true. And I think back on growth and how it does have to kind of match the founder of the company, basically. So let's get back to that. I really like that. I'm intrigued. Let's move on first, because I love that being a scientist, being an entrepreneur. I've traveled the world. I know a lot of different people. I'm very grateful. You may not know. Well, maybe you will describe this. How did we meet?
Yeah, so we met through an intermediary friend, Jeff Kiplinger, and Jeff is someone who I met a few years ago, and then when I started coming into Boston more and more, I met him a few times, and great guy, and got on really well with him. And I think when I interviewed him on my podcast, he said, "You need to meet Shane. I think you guys you'll get on. You guys talk about growth and learning and all the stuff we talk about." And we started our own businesses and grown our own businesses, and despite being born 6,000-7,000 miles away from each other and brought up in very different environments, but there's certainly some commonality between our journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. I love finding the commonality between all humanity. It's so good, and it's really what makes us very unique, and realizing that we're not. Let's see. We might want to think, our egos might want to think we're fairly unique, and maybe performance-wise we can be, but deep down we're all humans. And I love that. And I had Jeff on my podcast last week. It went very, very well, by the way. And so I reconnected with him. And to believe it or not, even though Jeff and I worked together for 6 or 7 years in a very big company at Pfizer, I didn't really know him. Thank goodness we reconnected. Oh my gosh, it's almost disappointing that I didn't get to know him better when I was right down the hall from him, and now we're 3,000 miles away. But we're reconnected, and we're talking about personal and business stuff. It's just great, and science. So your story is great, and so let's just start out about giving advice for starting and growing a business. And if you want to use personal examples, that would be great. Now, what I'd like you to twine in there or weave in there is how your personal and business growth coincided. Because I think personal growth, and you're a very personal growth person. And I know, Raman, you might think, well, no, you've met enough people where you probably know this now. I always think, well, everybody does personal growth, right? There are a lot of people in the world that don't change and don't want to change. And that's odd to me. But anyway, talk about that. Starting and growing a business and how it's interwoven in your personal and your business growth. And talk about details if you'd like. We'd love to hear it.
Sure. I think what I'll do is it's been 12, 13 years since I started a company. And as you know, your company goes through different phases. And, I feel like starting a company is very different to then growing a company. Absolutely. And I suppose my most recent experience is probably of growing a company, pivoting, and then the personal growth that goes with that. So I think, certainly from a business perspective, I mean, some of the things that I'm on my journey, I'm fortunate that we did and that I took the decision to do was specialize is one thing. So, particularly for service companies like ourselves, the business I run is digital content and creative agency. So it's no different to millions of marketing consultancies across the world, other than we decided to absolutely focus on one particular vertical, and that was it. As I say, we are invisible to 99.9% of the world, and we are very visible and very meaningful to the 0.01%. And that's very much by design. Okay, that's not, and it's one of the things I advise clients on now. And it's very difficult to be everything to everyone, right? Unless you're Amazon or Google or Facebook or whatever. It's starting niche is a very, very smart way to get a business off the ground, to specialize, to grow. So that kind of niche kind of focus has certainly given us a foundation to be very relevant to an audience. And as the market that we actually focus on is not actually pharma and biotech in the truest sense, but the supply chain that sits behind it. So, there is a huge supply chain that powers the development and production of drug products.
And describe that supply chain for our viewers, who a lot of them aren't scientists or even familiar with pharmaceutical development.
Well, there's a fantastic real life example right now, which is obviously the COVID vaccines coming. Today, I believe, is the first day that there is a COVID vaccine being given to patients in the US, which is absolutely wonderful news. And your previous employer is the company, one of the companies behind them, which is incredible. And what often happens in drug development is you have whoever is behind the idea, if you like, that we are going to try and take this particular therapy to market. But it takes normally it takes many years. And what you tend to do is outsource. You might outsource research, you might outsource analytics, you might outsource packaging. Basically, you just outsource everything that you don't want to do in-house, or it's more cost effective or quicker to do it outsourced. So in that market, there are lots of suppliers and vendors and companies that are specialist in particular technologies or whatever. And actually, those are the companies that we support. We make them visible to the buyers in that market. And it is a huge global industry, which I know, Shane, you know well. And that's, I class us as a super niche company. We are a super niche agency, and we got asked to do other stuff, and we're like, nah, it's okay, I'm not interested.
I get it. Yeah, we're in the same boat.
And and that's one of the learnings from a business perspective. When I first started out, every business opportunity, you were like, okay, let's do it, right? Like,
I get it. Yeah, and because you had to survive, right?
Yeah, and you learn to say no, right? Like, and that's something for anyone listening where you're developing your own business, is be very clear about if you've already got clients and you've already got customers, work out which are the best ones. So the best framework I always use and advise people is like, kind of profit versus maintenance. So you don't want high maintenance, low profit clients. They're a nightmare. These are the people that drain everything out of your being.
And again, and correct it, you lose an opportunity to get other clients because you're taking energy. Yeah,
that's exactly it. And you expand. You use all your precious energy on these types of clients, whereas the ones you really want are the ones that are nice to deal with, pay you on time, and actually are what I class as low maintenance clients. And it's funny because on our journey, we went through a phase. My wife calls it was my mini midlife crisis, and actually I call it crossroads. I feel like or certainly founders of service businesses get very excited and win lots of business and go on this journey, and then at some point they're like, oh my god, what am I doing? What am I actually doing? And I went through that process.
Sounds so familiar. I get it. I'm listening. I love it.
and I did that, and there were certain things like that matrix where when we did that, it's funny. I look back now, and in the first 5 years, we launched a TV channel. We worked for bars and restaurants. We always had this life science pharmaceutical piece to our business. And then when we did this matrix, I did this matrix one day. I remember 17 of the 32 clients we had were all in the life science. The best clients were all life science ones. And then that was the day where I thought, right, I'm just gonna focus. And around that time as well, I read a really interesting book called The Morning Miracle, which I'm not sure if you've come across it. And I don't know how I came across this book, but it was about developing morning habits and morning routines and things like that, which has become a big part of my life. And that actually was where, going back to your question, Shane, my personal growth, it was probably only 6 years ago that, I'd given the business everything I could at that point. And then I started thinking, right, I need to get into a learning habit. I was sick of the empty New Year's resolutions. Right, I'm going to read more books. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to take some time off work and learn. And it just didn't happen. So I started to get a lot more intentional with my own development and learning. And then that impacted actually the rest of the business as well. Because, you lead by example. So when your team can see that you are getting better and learning and all this type of thing. And for our business, the business was outgrowing me in a sense. And I needed to get ahead of that. And so, you asked about specifics. I mean, someone asked me recently, it was actually my accountant. He knows I'm into this type of thing. And he said, he asked me what my learning habit was, like what my time investment was. I said, look, my learning habit is really, really easy. I read for 10 minutes in the morning. So whatever book I'm reading tends to be a nonfiction book. I'll read for 10 to 15 minutes. And then I'll listen to a podcast while I'm working out, like a useful podcast. And then I'll read a couple of useful blogs on an evening. So that time investment is 20 to 30 minutes in a day. Maybe a bit more, because if I'm running or working out a bit longer, I'll listen to more. So maybe 45 minutes in a day. Some of it active and some of it, passive kind of learning. And over a week, that's a lot of content to be taken on board. So over the space of a month and a year, the compound effect of those learnings is huge. And I think, certainly for going back around personal growth, just building a learning habit around your own life, right? And that's, for me, is one of the most important things to do as an entrepreneur, not even as an entrepreneur, as a human. People just stop learning in life. And I find it fascinating because I know from my own, I suppose, learning and the success I've been able to have in life, I can pretty much put it back down to that period of my life, that pivot time and that development, I suppose, investing more time in myself and recognizing that was an investment worth making.
Yeah, no, that is so good. That's so true. And so, what's scary, and I had these times too as an entrepreneur, is that, you say you're doing 100 different things and you're taxed to the limit. And now you say to yourself, oh, I'm going to get rid of some clients because you want to focus, right? That's a scary thing because you're getting rid of revenue.
100%.
And it was like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And so they're really good discussions to have with your team and yourself and self-reflect. And it was one of the best things that we ever did, is to really, really focus and see where your core competencies are and then focus on those. And it sounds like you guys have done a brilliant job of that. And so I want to pivot into marketing and branding for life science companies or the supply chain, people that are in this realm, maybe not, just life science, the actual, what would I say, company that sells to the consumer, to the patient, like a Pfizer or a Merck or a Bristol Myers Squibb, but the people that are suppliers to them, like you were talking about.
That's it, yeah.
So what are the challenges of marketing and branding those companies because they're scientifically based and run by scientists?
Yeah, and therein lies one of the, I suppose, the reasons we've been quite successful is taking those recognizing that those scientists can't necessarily market themselves as well as they think they can.
Not even close. And are horrible at marketing.
And recognizing that there's actually quite a big emotional component to buying than there is, it's not just a functional purchase. And so I suppose one of the, if we actually don't talk about tactics or anything like that specific, but actually one of the reasons I think we've kept clients for many years is we've taken people on that journey when we've gone through it. So we haven't just been like a company that goes away and comes up with a plan and starts implementing. We've actually taken the key stakeholders in a business on that journey with us. So everyone feels empowered. Everyone feels accountable for whatever everything looks and feels and sounds like at the end of the road. Actually taking people on that journey and educating them as part of that journey. I always remember once being, there's a client that we have in the UK and the head of sales and marketing said, look, you're going to, we're going to go off site and there's like 30 people in this room, all, very, PhDs coming out of their ears, these guys, really bright people. And then, and part of my role was to actually educate them on marketing. And I remember what I did. I walked in there and I actually showed some logos of different brands. And I remember putting so British Airways as an airline brand, and then I would put, Southwest Airlines, for example. And what you were getting is very different opinions of these brands. And it was a very basic way of showing that they had a different perception of two companies that delivered exactly the same thing. And I use more like for like brands, like, a Holiday Inn versus, a Four Seasons or whatever. It's just a hotel, but your view, your experience, your perception is very, very different. Okay. And so I think for scientists anyway, I think in a weird way, they find us really great because we can articulate a lot of the things that they want to get across, but they'll get it across in a very functional, scientific manner. And the buyer isn't always a scientist. And this is the thing that, it could be, it could be a CEO of a biotech company. They don't necessarily need to be a scientist. So yeah, it's been fun, I suppose, being in that weird, in a Venn diagram of creative and science is a fun place to be.
Well, I mean, and it might not even be the CEO of a company. It might be somebody in procurement.
Sure.
That they're in charge of buying. That's it. And they have no science. They're going to be worried about numbers, but there's still trust, integrity, and emotion involved. And we'll get into that in a minute. And that's what buying decisions are. And so, marketing and branding. So, okay. So, because I love this topic, we could talk about it for days. Scientists are very introverted. And they're also very skeptical. So when you come to them and you say, hey, here's what we need to do for marketing. We need to be on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, and we need to brand ourselves. We need to start doing social media because you know what? Everybody under 35 is doing social media, right? And a lot of it, right? A lot of it. And so, and I've seen some companies do a good job at pivoting at this, and some have not. And they're going to get left behind. And that's the old days of the brochures and just a few posts every quarter, not working.
Yeah.
Not working. And so how do you, because as you probably know, working with scientists, you pitch them an idea and we're taught because of scientific theory and the scientific method to be skeptical. That's how we're learned. That's right. And so they don't get emotional. I'm kind of the opposite of science. I get very emotional. I get excited about things. And I think that's actually what makes me a strength as an entrepreneur is I look very passionate, and I am passionate. And so you take somebody who's introverted, very logical, not emotional, and very skeptical. Those three things are typical of scientists, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's how they're trained to be. And that's okay. Now, how do you market to them and get them to make a decision?
Well, there's two aspects. There's one, which is you come across these people on the client side, and data is very strong with these people. So thankfully, we now live in an era where you can measure most stuff. 20, 30 years ago, it was very difficult to measure any kind of marketing, especially in terms of traditional advertising. Whereas now, I suppose the digital dynamic of most marketing, particularly in COVID, right? The industry where events has disappeared. We know this in the industry you and I both operate in has been historically driven by trade events and, face to face. And it was really interesting what you're saying there, because, the ones that had recognized that had pivoted and invested in digital many years ago are now reaping the rewards, because whereas we've had people approach us just scrambling this year saying, hey, we haven't touched our website for 5 years. Like, what do we do? Where do we start? And, it's great for us because that's what we do, right? And we take them on that journey.
Yeah.
And, going back to, the buyer, when we engage with a client and we try and help a client, it all starts with understanding who the target audience is. It all starts with, what is that buyer looking for? What are their motivations? What do their pain points look like? What will success look like from them? And building, I suppose, your marketing materials around the pain points of the client that you're trying to reach. Now, whether that's a scientist or a non-scientist, there will be certain factors that will be, so for example, if it is someone who's quite skeptical, then stats on your website that back things up. Hey, we've delivered X amount of projects, our lead time is X. Whatever that is will trigger that part of their brain to be like, okay, like I understand that. But at the same time, the language will also be speaking to them that, oh, that actually sounds like me. I'm this guy. I'm this person. You can actually solve my problems. Now, it all sounds pretty basic on the face of it, but when it comes to actually articulating it all, we all have a habit, if you're writing, say, text for a website, we do this and we do that and we do this and we do that. And you're kind of like, well, you're not looking at it from the right lens. You should be looking at it from the client's lens, which is, what do you do and how does that make my life better? How are you going to make, what are the benefits? And it is interesting because it's not that people don't know that, it's just actually having the ability to articulate it in a way that resonates with the buyer.
It's true. I mean, you can look at different websites and you see, oh, there's a capability slide. Who cares? The client has already contacted you because they know you have the capabilities. Mm-hmm. Now you've got to make the sale. And so you're so right that, and what another challenge in our industry is everything. I don't mean to use the word everything necessarily, but most things are confidential and there's a lot of intellectual property involved. So it is difficult to, for example, talk about a reference publicly.
Sure.
It's very difficult to talk about statistics publicly. You can't usually say, well, we worked on
X, Y, and Z. Yeah, you can't.
Right. You can't say what project you worked on. How do you deal with that? That's certainly a challenge in our industry when it comes to advertising and social media. How do you deal with that, Raman?
Yeah, that is difficult. And, education's a big part of it. So, going back to what I said before about being as niche as possible and actually having a very specific technology or platform or something, if you can demonstrate and educate the buyer on a particular problem that you can solve, that's very powerful. And you don't have to go into the details of, hey, we've done it for X, Y, and Z. If you can, great, but you can also get around it by saying, we've worked with clients just like this. We've worked with on projects just like this. And these are the results that we've seen. That's quite a clever way of doing it. And that positioning piece for brands is really, really important. That's make sure you stand for something, right? Like, so whatever it is, stand for scientific integrity, stand for, hey, you're really nice to work with, stand for, or a combination of all of the above. And then the other side of it is also just the creative and emotional and softer side of things, that you want to resonate with the buyer in terms of, I want to work with these people. We still work in a business to business industry that is very people led. And you want to make sure that the culture of your business is reflected on your external communications. That's where you get a mismatch, right? If you're marketing yourself as, super friendly and, really, really customer oriented, and they pick up the phone and call you and no one even picks the phone up, that immediately there is a mismatch and they will go elsewhere. So that customer experience thing between your external facing and whatever your internal stakeholders are in your internal operations it goes a lot deeper than what does your website look like. And
you talked about it earlier, like you talked about scientific integrity and then the external versus the internal. And so obviously scientific integrity, I guess if I was to define it, it's that you're honest in your dealings with data everything is clear. You're following regulations like you're supposed to, all those kind of things, right? And so that's kind of would you say integrity and scientific integrity right now in our industry is kind of a buzzword?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because I think science generally is very cool all of a sudden because of COVID. Actually, there is a real, for many years that I've worked in the sector, there's always been a great desire to get more people into science. There's particularly from a UK perspective, that's what we've seen is getting kids, more interested in science. And I mean, if there's one good thing that will come out of the pandemic, it will be that, hey, these scientists are kind of important people. We probably need more scientists. And, if a couple of my kids and a couple of your kids end up going down that path, it's generally a path that leads to, some kind of value and career success. Sure. And I think on the integrity side, I think, most of the industry that we operate in, I think because of the nature of the regulations and because of the way the industry is, you have to deal with integrity. Because if you don't, then, you'll be on the news for all the wrong reasons, right? And we certainly advise all our clients, naturally is to operate ethically and don't cut corners. And the last thing you want to do is get a bad rap off the regulators. It's just not worth it.
And that's so true. And a mentor of mine said, this is almost 20 years ago, probably 15 years ago, something about, people always talk about quality and we have quality. Well, you have to in our industry. So, and I think it's some ways integrity is the same way. It's like, yeah,
it's a given.
It's a given. So why are we even talking about it? I'm not sure. I struggle with that one. But what I was going to say is you were talking about internal versus external, the face you want to portray to people externally, but what's really happening internally. And you talked about integrity. Externally, you might say, oh yeah, we're scientifically integrate. We have integrity, whatever. So we have high quality. You can trust what we do. But then you might see some cultural dysfunction. And how can you really, if your internal and your external doesn't match, is that really going to work out very well?
I mean, you might get away with it for a while, but then I feel like you'll get caught out in a people-based business. And ultimately, I think it comes back down to the values within a business and the company values that you set. And we always say to our team, look, make decisions and conduct yourself aligned to our brand values, and you generally won't go wrong. And I think there's a lot to be said for making sure. We worked with companies in the past that will have internal values and external values, and I do struggle with that generally because I always think they should be the same thing.
I think so too.
And you might have behavioral values as one aspect, and then an external one being like what we believe in. But I'm a big believer in they should be the same thing. I think because that then addresses the alignment challenge that you often you certainly could get by not your internal team not representing the external face of the business, which I think is, as a buyer, you could use any example of, if you go to a car garage because you hear a good advert or, you hear an offer or whatever, and it sounds fun. Or if you go to, actually, better example is a hotel. You go to a really nice hotel that you're expecting to be 5-star and you go in there, the lady behind the desk has got food spilt on her shirt and she's like very rude and she's on the phone. And I know it's a really daft example, but it straight away tells you, well, this is not the experience I'm expecting. I've paid $500 a night to be here. So if you scale that up into entrepreneurial driven businesses like ours, it's and right, the biggest challenge is maintaining that alignment, because people change, people evolve, and you have to lose people on the journey. And
as you grow, you have to add the appropriate people. And at a certain size, you sometimes start getting cliques.
Sure.
Sometimes even cliques in upper management where they're siding with other people and going against other managers. And that's not integrity at all. That's definitely not. And it will show in your external values too. Well, external treatment. Because one of the issues I've always had with values, you can go to people's web pages and read their values. And most of it, in my opinion, looks like lip service. And most of them are the same. I don't know if they've had the same consultant work on all their values or what, but I'm like,
it wasn't me.
I know, that's okay. I'm not against you. No, not all companies are the same. So don't make a value statement if that's not really what your values are, and if you really can't live behind it, change it up. Because obviously you're doing this for a reason. You have revenue for a reason. So there's somebody out there that's paying for your service. Match it to them. That's my point.
And we always say to clients, make your values as meaningful to your organization as possible. And what we mean by that is use language that you use. Don't use fancy corporate language. And it's funny because we almost went on that journey ourselves. We started using, we've always had 6 to 8 values, and the 6 values that we have now, the nature of the words that we use are just so simple that it actually works for our team. And actually clients are intrigued by it. So one of our values is a word from Newcastle in the northeast of England, which is be canny. And what canny means, and it's funny because when I moved to the US, I remember someone saying, well, you should change that value because Americans aren't going to understand it. And I'm like, what I've noticed, Americans are actually very curious beings. And they're like, what is this? Where is it from? What's the heritage?
It's true.
And actually, it's always a great icebreaker because the word means be friendly, be likable, be nice. That's it. And
see, I actually, as an American, I didn't know that. I didn't know. I always thought cunning was something different. So that
canny, Canny, canny,
N-N-Y.
Yeah, but it has a different meaning in Scotland. So in Scotland, it can mean like a little bit thrifty, a little bit, a little bit crafty. But actually what it means to our culture is just be nice to people, be likable. And another value that we have, which is be scrappy. And again, it was one of those where people were like, well, I'm not sure if when you go to the US, people are going to understand that. Americans love the word scrappy, which I never knew. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, because we're scrappy. It's about being tenacious, determined, get the job done and all this type of stuff. So, but again, they're not, we could have had, be nice. We could have had, be determined.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that other than it just didn't feel like us. And it's one of the things that when we're helping clients with, often unearthing these values, it's like use the language that your team understands, that you want to shout from the rooftops because you're so proud of them. Like that's real values.
I like it. I like that. That's really cool. So pivoting during COVID, what has that been like for you? Not for you, just you, and your company, but also the companies you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it sounds terrible in the grand scheme of what's going on in the world, but we've been very fortunate and very busy during COVID. So just because of the nature of the industry that we work in, you know yourself, Shane, that the drug development life science space is one of those industries that has been hugely in demand in the last year because of obvious reasons. So we as a business have had to recruit more than we've ever recruited before, which again sounds crazy. We've added 30%. We've increased our staff count by 30% this year, and that's been driven purely by demand in the market. And it's not quite a pivot, as opposed to that brings its own challenges and growing pains. And how do you induct people remotely? That's been a challenge, right? Internationally, and we have a lady that's done a phenomenal job. She's an office manager, right? This lady joined us at the start of COVID as an office manager in one of our offices. She's an obvious person to potentially put on furlough or be like, what's she going to do? And she's become one of the key people in our organization in terms of keeping staff happy, inducting new staff. And we are again, using simple language, we believe in happy clients, happy staff. That's it. Like, keep your staff happy, you keep your clients happy generally is a really, really good kind of in a business to business. And so that's been a big part of our year, is keeping our staff engaged, keeping their morale up, and not always successfully, but fending off mental health challenges. Sure. We've got team members that live on their own, and that's been very difficult. We've got some that have kids, and that's been difficult. So just being supportive and being a good, I don't want to say employer because it feels like too corporate, but just being good people and just supporting people this year has hopefully generated even more loyalty from our team in terms of like being in a company that, we're very, it sounds terrible, but we're very big on the little things. So, sending little gifts to our team, just doing things like we've done so many things this year, like things like, we had a great quarter. We said to everyone, take the afternoon off. Here's $50 or whatever it was. Get a takeout and watch, a new release on, on Google Play or Amazon Play or whatever, Prime or whatever. So it's almost like a night out, but without obviously being able to go out, and just doing little things like that would show your team that you care about them as humans. It's been, that culture side is hugely important.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And those are great stories. I too have the problem of saying employee and employer. So sometimes I say team, teamwork,
a colleague,
coach. Yeah, it's something. Yeah. It's really hard because it just sounds so, I don't know, official, corporate.
I agree. It doesn't fit well with our culture. And I'm not sure I answered your question about pivot there. I suppose we've had to pivot into a different type of business, I suppose, was my point now. Like, we have had to pivot around the circumstances and make it work for our organization and make it work for our clients and our team. And that's been difficult, but at the same time, like, hopefully, like, other companies will come out of it stronger and better going into 2021.
Well, certainly, having a niche company and what was it? Scrappy. If you're scrappy, you're very nimble. You're very dynamic, so you can make changes quickly. I love that. I really, really like that. And some of these organizations are like steering a battleship, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really, really slow to make any changes. So really, really good job, Raman. That's just a great story.
So we've had a few scary moments in the last 12 years. I always remember, and you'll appreciate this one given the industry that you operate, but our biggest client back in 2013 or 2014 was a contract manufacturing company, and they failed their inspection, and we pretty much lost our biggest client overnight. And it's funny, I look back, and I used to work for that company, so I had an emotional investment as well in that business, and it was very sad to be a part of that situation and how it all turned out and things like that. But what it actually meant is it galvanized me, it galvanized our business to think, okay, we really need to do some, like, look after our own marketing and business development and really think about what we're trying to be as a business, because I can't remember, 35% of our business was going to disappear overnight. And that was a scary moment, but in a weird way ended up becoming one of the better learnings. And it's funny because most of the mistakes and failures that I've had in my career have ended up becoming pivotal learnings that are kind of worth it in the long run. They don't feel like, they feel horrible at the time.
I get it. Wow.
In terms of proudest, you know what? This is going to sound really weird, but so a year ago, last August, I went back to the UK because one of my team was getting married, and it was the end of August last summer, and Holly, her name is, and she was my second employee in the business, and her and her husband Tom will get married in this beautiful old barn conversion out in Northumberland in northeast England. So very, very British, very green, very beautiful. Cold summer's evening, classically British, right? It may as well have rained as well. And my wife and I, with the kids, were flying to Spain in the morning. We was 2 days in the UK, and then we were heading to Spain. And everyone's had a few drinks and all that type of thing. Me and my wife, a bit older than most people there now, we were sat on a table and we were just watching the dance floor, and I think there was 20 of at the time, said 25 or 30 team. So 20 of my team were invited to the wedding. Oh. And we were just watching Holly in this like center with all of the team, and they weren't the team, right? They were there as friends, and like on this special day. And that moment stuck with me because I was kind of like, not by design, but my business has somehow created this moment for these people, which I will treasure forever, because I've just got it imprinted on my mind of just like, what a beautiful moment just to see 25 people or so having the time of their life, and they're all connected because they all work for Ramarketing. And it was really, we've won awards and big clients, and, we've opened offices elsewhere in the world and stuff like that. But I don't know, there was just something very special and authentic and real about that moment that really stuck with me.
That is a very proud moment to know that you've been a part of putting that many people together, because they might have not even known each other if it hadn't been for you. I think that's really, really awesome. That is a proud moment. Well, really, really good job.
Thank
Well,
you.
2 questions I ask on all my podcasts. We'll get to those now. One of them is, and I don't believe in failures. I've certainly had what might look like failures to some people, and I may even think they're kind of failures. I've learned to change my mindset to realize as I look back, they were all just learning moments. And so, what thing in your life somebody may have seen it as a failure, and maybe even you saw it as a failure, but it turned out to cause more success in the end. Can you name a moment like that?
I can. And you know what? It's actually a relatively easy one for me because it was a pivotal one. So we worked up, and it goes back to, saying no to clients, what we talked about earlier. This was before I did any of that. We got an opportunity to work with a company. And, I look back and I was so naive at the time. We went into it with, as a really charming client or in a really good location, a new sector, and I was very excited. Didn't ask any questions, just went it, didn't scope it properly, and just went ahead and did it. And they turned out to be the absolute biggest nightmare that you could ever imagine. To the point where I remember ringing up and said, "We have transferred all the money you've spent with us back to you. All the best," right? And I remember at the time, it wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was the pain it caused us. And actually the reason it caused us all that pain is because I got too excited and we did not scope the project properly.
I get it. Yeah.
And we then developed what, I'm not going to say the name of the client, but we call it the name of the client, like an abbreviation of that client actually. But effectively we developed a red flag system. And the red flag system was, and it's not just about the size of the company and how much they're spending and what the scope is. It was actually, I'm not gonna curse on your podcast, but one of the things, I'm trying to think of a non-curse word to use. Is this person is he or she a jerk?
Yeah.
Because if they're a jerk at that point, they ain't going to get any better when you start working with them, right? And we have a list of things, which is more functional stuff. And that mistake was as painful as it was at the time. Has probably saved us so much in qualification of the right type of clients and the right type of customers going forward. And it's something that I say to people that I've helped mentor and guide is just what seemed like the worst things ever at the time end up shaping you in the future, and you don't necessarily reflect on that at the time. But looking, when as life moves on, and the biggest issue one day is not the following week because something else comes up, right? So, but that was the one that comes to mind, which is just, what was a failure, definitely, 100%. But I also have a funny one, which I thought you'd appreciate. One, it wasn't a failure, well, it can count as a failure or a mistake, but I once transferred £100,000 to the wrong bank account. So that's what, 140,000 bucks. I transferred to the wrong bank account.
Whoa.
And my learning we got it back eventually. We got it back. But my learning for that was never do a job like that when you're tired.
Sleep on it.
It was the end of the day. I was exhausted and I was transferring the money. We were changing company bank accounts and I was putting money from one bank account to another. And I even joked to my wife saying, imagine if I got the account number wrong. And it turned out that I did. But again, I would never put in bank details or anything like that when I'm that tired, because you'll make a mistake. So there you go.
Well, interesting you say that. I mean, I love both those stories, by the way. And why I like the first one, don't be a jerk, right? Is because, a lot of times as scientists, even in business practices, you say, okay, here's the kind of client we want. This amount of revenue, this location, this demographic, this space, whatever it is, right? And I've always liked that because it's very logical, very scientific, right? And instrument manufacturers also do this when they sell to us. They say, well, here, we're going to give you this instrument on consignment. And if it meets these 10 criteria, then you're going to buy it. And I said, okay, just add number 11 to it, which is kind of what we do with contracts too when working with people. Do I like it? Period.
Yeah. No,
there has to be subjectivity to it. Because sometimes you put something into your culture and you're like, I don't know what's going on here, but the people don't like it.
Well, a bad client can like for a small organization, a bad client can really, really damage your culture and your business. And we've seen that in our experience, and we're very mindful of. I mean, it's funny. Even this summer, we had a potential client that contacted us from a European-based pharmaceutical company. Ticks all the functional boxes. Wanted help with COVID-related communications, and my colleague who did the call said, "I've got a bad feeling about him." I was like, "Say no thanks. Walk away. We don't need the business." And do we regret it at all? Not at all. So,
because it was probably your gut tells you something. Now, I don't know if it's our passion and our wanting to succeed and be accepted, because it sounds like you've made some of the same mistakes I have, including late at night making some really poor decisions.
Sleep on it, as you said, yeah.
Sleep on it. I mean, hardly what I've learned over the years, there is no fire in life. Unless there truly is a fire in your house, there's no fire. It can wait until the morning.
Yeah.
But I think how people like you and probably me are wired is like, get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. It's another box to check. And it's like, I've made some huge mistakes there as well. So thanks for pointing that out, is it's okay to sleep on it. There's no fire. As many times as people want to make it your fire.
Yeah, it's not. There's a good quote, a really simple quote that I don't know where I heard it from, but it relates to that exact thing, which is respond, don't react. And there's something very simplistic, because on the face of it, they're almost identical words, but they're not, because reacting to something and responding requires more thought. And whether it's sleeping or thoughting or time or taking a walk or whatever. Right. And that's what I try my best to do now. I'm not always perfect.
Me either. But you are great to talk with. You are great for our show. And the last question I always ask is about the never be out work mindset and how that applies in your life. And obviously, you now have a company of 45 people, 45 FTEs, all this team in the UK and Europe and the United States. Obviously, what I know is when somebody's successful, I don't care if it's Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, by the way, whether you like them or not, it doesn't matter. I know they went through a struggle to get where they're at, including yourself. So I know at one point, and probably still, they have that never be outworked mindset. So what would it be in your life? How is that applied to you, your never be outworked mindset?
I think, more than anything is I look at the different roles I play in my life, and it's not just about work, it's about other aspects of your life as well. So, I say to myself every morning, kind of affirmation, be the best dad I can be the best husband, brother, son, colleague, and leader I can be every morning.
I love it.
And those 6 roles define 99% of what I do in life. And I am trying to get better at every single one of them every day. And I can definitely, my wife can probably, agree that I could be a better husband. Being a parent is super tough, and, being more patient with my kids and not shouting at my kids. And that is something that I genuinely I find it very challenging to keep my patience, and I'm not a hot-headed guy or anything like that. Just my kids just drive me up the wall sometimes, right? Which I know I'm sure everyone, and the final thing is, I suppose, is we didn't really talk about, but a bit like with you and your weightlifting is, I'm a huge believer in health and fitness, and I've been fortunate to run a few marathons, and it's a big part of my life is staying active, staying lean. It's kind of like, it's a bit like your mind. I feel like it took me 20 years to work out my brain is the same as my body. It's crap in, crap out, right? So if you fill your body with crap in, it's the same. So I limit my social media activity. I limit my watching. I don't do video games or anything like that, because I feel like I'd rather just read a book or whatever. And so I think that those aspects of not just thinking about yourself as one-dimensional, as a leader or a husband or whatever, but recognizing that you got to balance all of them and try to be the best version of yourself in all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true. And obviously, as you defined yourself with so many different things there, being a dad, a husband, a leader, a marathon runner, I think that's great. And that all requires work. And when I say work, I assume it's like you. It's not like being a dad is work, being a husband is work, being having good relationships is work. It's not what I like to say. I don't like to use the word work because that's kind of, people think that as a negative. It's like a 4-letter word, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's work. No, but everything you do in life has to be intentional.
Sure.
So that's probably even a better word, is intentional. So
I agree.
when you want to scream at your kids, believe me, I want to almost every time I'm with them. Okay, no, yeah. You have to be intentional, right?
Yeah, you do.
That requires a lot of work. That requires reading. That requires discipline. That requires all this background information of trying to learn about a teenager or a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. So good job. You have an awesome never be outworked mindset. I'm so happy. I'm so proud. I'm so honored to have you on this program. And we are wrapping it up now. Thank you for taking time. I know you're super busy, and hey, you go take care of that family, go take care of your team members, go keep living life to the fullest and have that never be outworked mindset. Let me finish with a few shameless plugs. Find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can also find me on Parler now as well. This podcast and my previous podcast will be available on my website, drsneedham.com, and this one will be edited and available in a week or so on like my other podcasts. And just go search Dr. Shane Needham, Secrets of Success with Dr. Shane Needham on YouTube, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, and on iTunes. Thank you very much, Raman. Thank you very much, viewers, for giving us so many engagements, hundreds of thousands of engagements these past couple of months on social media. I'm just truly, truly honored. And thank you, Raman. And you go have an awesome day.
Thanks, Shane. Look after yourself. Take care. Happy holidays.
Hey, thank you. Happy holidays.
Okay. Bye.